Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AMA session on the evolution of website building tools. Today, we have an amazing guest. That is Miriam Schwab, and she has almost around 17 plus of year experience in WordPress, and she is head of relationships in the Eliminator. And she will quite bit introduce herself, and then if you want, we can just a little bit further with the topic, right?
Okay, so I should introduce myself a
So,
bit.
Miriam, goes to you. Yeah, bit.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam Schwab, and like she said, I'm head of WordPress relations at Elementor. Before joining Elementor, I founded and managed a WordPress development agency, providing custom WordPress solutions to companies and nonprofits, and did that for about 13 years, and then founded a company called Stratic, which is static hosting and publishing for WordPress websites to improve um, performance, scalability, and security. And did that for a number of years, and we were acquired by Elementor in June of 2022, so coming on 2 years almost. And since then, I've been part of Elementor.
Great, great. And so, Miriam, could you first tell us about what is evolution of website tools are and how this is the process comes in?
Sure. So having been in the WordPress space for many years, I've seen a lot of tools and approaches to web development come and go, and some stayed and some evolved into other ways and approaches of building websites. So when I started out, like many others at that time, I I was building just like plain HTML and CSS websites. So every page was its own page. And that's basically how a lot of people did it at the time, because CMSs or content management systems, there were the open source ones, which were more accessible, but in some ways complicated. And then there were proprietary ones, which were very expensive and also complicated to implement. So that's how a lot of people were building websites. And I started to offer that as a service. And when I did, I started to become annoyed by people wanting me to like change their content for them when they should just be able to do that themselves. I wanted to be involved in the web building side, setting it up for them, but they should like be able to, add a comma to their sentence without needing me. So that's when I really started exploring the CMS angle and discovered WordPress, tested it, started working with it, and really, really loved it. So that was the next stage of web development or web building tools, the CMSs, which was kind of the first stage of no code web building. So when I was building pages, I had to like modify HTML and CSS. So that's some form of code. Whereas with the CMS, you just could manage the content almost like if you were editing a Word document. And that was a huge piece of news for the internet, because it just made it much more accessible for people. And one of the reasons that WordPress itself, I think, ended up kind of winning in terms of market share. Right now, WordPress is 43% of the internet, is because it was easy to get set up with it, relatively easy. It had a famous kind of 5-step installation process. Everything else was much more complicated to get up and running with it. And editing content in WordPress was very user friendly. So that was definitely strong points in its favor that helped with its growth. And that was kind of like the first step in making web building accessible to everyone. Also, WordPress themes. The fact that you could just take a theme, install it, and have a site, looking a certain way, it was a big deal. And it really aligns with WordPress's message of democratizing publishing. So that was the first step. But like everything, the first step of something ends up being limiting in some way. And one of the great things about WordPress in general is the community. So when people identify an issue, they'll often create a solution because they can. WordPress is very extensible. There's the plugin ecosystem and the theme ecosystem. So we started to see different attempts to make actually building your page easier for you, not just editing the content, but like customizing it to look the way you wanted it to. And so a lot of more themes were being developed, custom themes, premium themes, things like that. But we also saw the introduction of page builders. I think WP Bakery which was called, wow, I can't remember what it was called then, was the first one.
Sure.
And it, it was revolutionary in that people could kind of drag and drop their page to look a certain way or their content. It used a lot of short codes for it and it got kind of messy, but the fact that you could do it was a big deal. And then I think Beaver Builder was the next one, and then Elementor soon after. But this, it's good when you see a number of tools coming to solve a certain problem. Each tries to solve it in kind of a similar way, but with different approaches in some ways. And that led to the next stage of the world of web development, which was, and specifically in WordPress, which was like page builders and drag and drop page builders, which took the democratization of publishing mission to the next level, because now you could not only just like publish your content easily, you could build out your website the way that you want to more easily. So that was very exciting, and obviously it's something that caught on because it's been growing over the years, and all of these page builders have a very strong community of users around it, and enthusiastic users who are using these tools like power tools to help them really achieve their goals. I think that the next stage of this evolution, there's other details along the way. I'm just kind of like looking at the big picture, but the next stage of the evolution is actually AI. If what we're,
Exactly.
all of these tools from WordPress to page builders, oh, by the way, I shouldn't forget advanced custom fields. Advanced custom fields also help people create more structure and more capabilities around the content management of the site. The next stage is AI because it gives people even more capabilities, or at least it has the promise to do that, where people can kind of, rather than even understanding necessarily how page builders work, can tell the page builder, build a page that looks like this, build a page that does that. Like, I think that's eventually where we're going to get. And that really levels the playing field and democratizes publishing, because as long as you can say something or type something,
Mm.
you may be able to just like produce a website. So that's I think where we're at in the stages of evolution of the web scene.
Wow, thank you for sharing this information. And as you have already mentioned that for the CMS, like drag and drop, the features are really easy to go with. So, is there any like popularity, or is there any like reason behind as to why you choose WordPress only instead of any other CMS?
When I was first exploring the CMSs that were out there, they were divided into two categories: proprietary and open source. So proprietary means the source code is closed or like not accessible to the users.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it also generally means that there's a specific team of people that are dedicated to maintaining and developing that piece of software. It also means that it can end up being quite expensive. But the price issue is actually the least of the problems of the proprietary direction. What happens with proprietary software, and we see that till today with the closed garden types of solutions like Wix and Squarespace, which are great products, but they have this same issue, which is that at a certain point, there's something you're not going to be able to do with it. Like, if it doesn't already have that solution built in, or someone created an extension that's been approved by them for their marketplace or whatever, you just won't be able to do that. Whereas when you have an open source piece of software and you can access the code and you can essentially do whatever you want, you should actually never hit any kind of walls with it, as long as you have the technical capabilities, you or someone else. But like, you can make it happen. And that's really important, particularly for larger companies, more enterprise types of companies, where they're building their websites like it's a web application, and it serves their business needs, and they need to customize it to meet their goals. And first of all, like, just really match their brand, but also in terms of the flow, the user flow throughout the website and what people can actually do on the website, they need it to be very targeted, and they need to easily and quickly be able to modify things and test things. And that is something that an open source platform allows you to do. So when I was looking at the options, the idea of an open source software where like pretty much anything can be done, or if I can't do it, there's probably a plugin that someone created that can do it for me. Or because it's such a big community, there are suppliers and developers and builders that I could potentially contract with who can do things for me. Like, it just means the options are much broader. And also it kind of has a stronger guarantee for the future of the website, because a product like WordPress is constantly being developed and constantly moving forward and has so many people around it. If I build a website today, that product will continue to be developed for at least 5 years. I mean, probably more. And so like that also ensures the health and integrity and future of my site. So all of those things led to me going in the open source direction. And the reason I went with WordPress was really because it wasn't unnecessarily complicated. So Joomla and Drupal had I don't remember exactly what, but there were things about it that were just much more complicated than WordPress and less intuitive. WordPress's approach to like, here's a post, write a post. It was just so straightforward. It wasn't trying to be anything else. And it was easy to digest and grasp. And the theming system, like taking a theme and modifying it or building a theme even, it was pretty straightforward. Plus there's like so many theme options out there, and there start to be theme frameworks and all the plugins. It just it was more robust, more intuitive, more user friendly, and all of those things led me to being excited about it and excited about learning it and trying to learn how to do more with it. So that's why I ended up with WordPress.
Great. That's pretty much clear. So, so we have some of the bit questions from the public audience. First, just we need to ask that can you share some insights on the impact of website building tools on like user experiences and the conversion rates?
So the tool that you use to build your site is just like the tool, right? And you can do anything with it. You can create a terrible website and you can create an amazing website. So in the end, if you know how to build a good website with a good user experience, the page builder will help you do that like well and easily. And also page builders like Elementor at least tend to be built with best practices in mind. So the structure of the page builder probably supports you building a decent website. But in the end, user experience and conversion rates are in your hands, the builder, who use the tool to build the site to get the best results. And that's something that, well, page builders today don't do, but with AI becoming part of it, and Elementor has an AI product that integrates with the page builder, I think that will change where not yet, but eventually AI will be able to advise you on ways to improve the UX of your site, even potentially analyze data from how people are using your site and then make suggestions and also help you improve conversion rates. But at the moment, it's in your hands.
Exactly, that's what's going to be happen, and that's pretty much clear. So, our jumping up to the next question is that what are the key differences between the traditional WordPress themes and the modern website builders, such as Eliminators or DB?
Sorry, I didn't hear. What are the difference between traditional WordPress themes and modern? Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
traditional WordPress themes, they come built in with like a structure in terms of how pages are laid out. And you can modify it to a certain extent, maybe by going into the code. But that's what it looks like. At a certain point, themes started to have a customizer section where you could start to customize a lot of things around it. So you could customize the colors and you could choose to, yes, display this, don't display that. Those customization areas try to allow users to customize so much that I think they kind of get out of control with like a million options. And that's not great from the builder's user perspective, because you're just like, wait, did I turn that on? Did I turn that off? Are things conflicting with each other? But that was like the extent of trying to give you more control over your theme. Whereas with page builders like Elementor or Divi, I mean, you can like imagine how you want your page to be and more or less drag it into place, right? There's certain blocks or structural things, but those structural things are like best practices. You do need to have certain sections in your site, and they should be like structured in that way. But you can you can basically do whatever you want. Obviously, like the more advanced you are in terms of how to utilize and maximize these builders, the more you can do. But with the traditional WordPress themes, you could actually also do whatever you want, but you would have to do it on the code level, which is not
Yeah.
everyone's cup of tea. And with the website builders, you can basically more or less do whatever you want, but you can do it from the front end without having to dig into code.
Yeah. That's pretty much clear. Okay, so since you have already shared some insights on website building tools, user experiences for these kinds of things, and you are already saying that AI is trending, that future is behind AI, right? So, with the related table to the next question, that with the rise of like no code or low code solutions, how do you see that the website building tools evolving to cater a broader range of users? You know, from beginning to experienced developers users.
I think it's always been the case that in the world of website building, there's the non-developer users, and then there's the experienced developer users. And both of those audiences need to be addressed and cared for. So I think we're going to see like more and more capabilities from the no code perspective that will make the no code type of users happy. Like, let's say marketers, content creators, it gives them more capabilities where they don't have to depend on developers. And that already is a strong point with products that like web products, where if you can remove the dependency on developers for content creators and marketers, that's a huge value proposition, because it lets them move much faster and do what they want to do, rather than like creating tickets for the developers on their team, waiting for them to get around to it. And usually the website's not exactly a top priority for R&D teams, so they'll like kind of ignore it, and like that's very frustrating for marketing teams. So the no code is really important for that, and also just for people who generally like want to set up a website for their business. Like they're an expert in what their business is, but not in web building, so they can do that pretty easily. But on the other end, the way I see it is that websites are going to become more and more like web applications for more sophisticated needs. So the way that we approach building tech products is also the approach that is being used and will be used to build more sophisticated websites. Workflows, version control, front end, back end, like all that kind of stuff. That's going to apply to these larger websites, and that's correct. That's the way it should be when you get to the stage where you're building much more complex websites and they really are like web applications. And in that case, the page builders will continue to serve the marketing team so they can move fast. We'll even serve the developers so that they don't have to spend time like or waste time on things that don't need their coding capabilities, and then they can focus on the more sophisticated, complex stuff where they can really bring value.
Great. Okay, so jumping a bit to the next question, which I am pretty much too excited to hear your answer as well towards this. So, just looking ahead, at what innovations or developments do you anticipate in the next generation of the website building tools, like, and how they will like address into the emerging industry needs? Like, I've already said that AI is increasing, so how it will be like emerging into the next industry needs?
So on the one hand, I think that the building industry has like kind of peaked, meaning I'm not sure what else needs to be solved. What was interesting and exciting in the beginning was that there were a lot of things that needed to be solved, like a lot, like just servers and security and performance and like managing content in a better way. And even like when WordPress became an actual CMS, evolved from just being like a blogging platform to being a CMS, that was exciting. SEO plugins, like everything. But now that all exists and they're all good. Like, oh yeah, SEO was a big thing. A plugin like Yoast was a game changer for all of us because it gave us much more control over the on-site SEO for our sites without needing to modify code, and it just made it more dynamic and scalable. So like we've solved like a lot of stuff, and even like now there's more sophisticated kind of forward-thinking approaches to web hosting. There's really interesting products. Cloudways has an interesting product where you can like basically choose your stack more or less. Stratic, which is a company I founded, static hosting, that combines like kind of an industry that's outside of WordPress with WordPress, and a more modern approach to web development. Headless, which is being championed by companies like WP Engine. There's like a lot of interesting modern approaches. So what's next? We'll come back to AI, but also, and this could also be connected to what AI will be able to do for us, things like personalization, creating a more personalized experience for users when they're on your site that's more targeted to them, what we know about them, potentially their interests, their needs. Um, that can be interesting. And then like workflows around managing websites. So, a tool like InstaWP is really interesting and doing great stuff around that. There's other tools, Updraft, and there's just like really cool tools out there. And I think, maybe they'll take their products to the next level in terms of all that kind of workflow management. But I really think that in order to keep growing or maintain its market share, WordPress needs to focus on user experience, and the user experience is that of the content managers. We're competing with social media in terms of like how easy or hard it is to create content. WordPress is much more clunky. If someone opens up a site like a WordPress site and it's like, what's next? It's hard to know what's next. Like it's not so straightforward. So I think considering the modern tools that are out there around content creation, that's some web development tools and building tools, but also even social media, WordPress needs to look at look at that side of things, um, so that we draw in fresh new users. So I think that's going to be something that because WordPress needs to continue to be a big player. It's really the best open source option out there, and there needs to be a good open source option that needs to continue to play a leading role on the web. So open source has its pros and cons, and in this case, a product that's been around for 20 years, which is amazing and still widely used, even though it's legacy. That's really impressive, but it's also kind of showing its age. So to like really take it to the next level, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And in addition to that, WordPress needs to market itself as a viable option so that people know about it, discover it, try it, and use it.
Great. Thank you for sharing this. Okay, so just wanted to contradict with your the last answer that you have given to the question. So I'm just wanted to know that do you think the other tools like the Eliminator as well as you have mentioned and the other tools are in the market like in the next AI generation tools are even there into the market. So do you think they still need to contribute it to the WordPress itself since the WordPress market is quite high, but they are still, do you think, needed to contribute into the WordPress for the website creation?
Like contribute to the WordPress open source project.
Exactly, yes.
I do. Smaller companies, it's very hard to figure out how to contribute while also trying to build out your product. Like it's a struggle. So, but even small contributions are possible, and all these companies, all of us, we're dependent on WordPress. It's the infrastructure for what we're doing, and we want it to be a good product and continue to be developed. So being open source, who is that? It's us. Like it should be us. So yes, uh, people and companies need to continue to contribute if we want to see a good future for WordPress and our own solutions that are built on WordPress.
Yeah, that's great. That means you're thinking that the tools are likely to contribute to the WordPress.
Sorry.
So that means the tools are contributing next to the WordPress, right?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, as you know that you already have mentioned that the websites are becoming like web apps into the next future. So, can you just discuss some the impact of mobile responsiveness and optimizations of the websites building tools?
Responsiveness is actually one of the first big challenges that the web had to solve when mobile phones came out. How do we make sure that
Hmm.
the websites are user friendly on mobile devices as well? And in the beginning, people would build like a kind of a separate mobile site. It would often be like m.website.com. But then responsiveness came about, which was a game changer, and
Hmm.
really changed the user experience around mobile, which is amazing. And of course, over the years, everyone has learned how to build mobile websites in a better way. so that
Yeah.
they are offering more value to users and potentially
Mm.
increase conversion rates. So that's really important, and that continues to play a role. The next challenge for mobile websites is performance for sure.
Mhm.
If you run websites through speed tests, you'll often find the desktop site is performing okay or well, and the mobile site is performing poorly. Um, there's like a few challenges around performance on mobile. One is just mobile devices are less powerful than, and even though they're super powerful today, they're less powerful than desktops. And if they're using a cell network, that can be slower. So all of that like is a challenge. But also we have to keep in mind that there are people in many countries who aren't like using the high end iPhone and don't have 5G or even 4G. So you're already coming from a place of slow device plus slow internet connection. So if your site is like too heavy or not efficiently built, it's going to be slow for them, and it's going to be a poor experience. So that's the next challenge that needs to be solved well, because people are constantly struggling to try to figure it out, and there's tools or like that are trying to do it, and even page builders, like from Elementor's perspective, it's our responsibility to make sure that the user experience of the sites built with Elementor is good. So there's every release includes performance improvements, and like the team is making huge strides on increasing the performance around Elementor. If I remember correctly, our last release improved TTFB by 30%, which is very significant. TTFB is time to first byte, like the how long it takes for the first bit of information to appear on your screen. Um, so it's on all of us who are building these platforms to also tackle that issue and try to make sure that mobile performance is good. So that's definitely a challenge that still needs to be solved.
Okay, great. I guess your answers are a bit clear for everyone. And jumping into the next question is that what are some best practices for integrating the website building tools and seamlessly with WordPress plugins or themes?
Um, a lot of testing. That's basically what it comes down to. Like if you're building something, you need to test it a lot. Like, and you need
Yeah.
to also take into consideration different versions of like everything, different versions of WordPress, different versions of PHP, different server types, if it's Nginx or if it's Apache. It's like there's so many different configurations that are possible with WordPress, different themes, different plugins. Does my new tool conflict with any of that? So it's about a lot of testing, especially in the beginning. A great tool that is pretty new that you can use for easy testing is Playground, which allows you to spin up a WordPress instance in your browser, and it also allows you to change the configuration. So you can choose different PHP versions, etc. Um, and you can save like a website configuration and like retest it. It's a really cool tool. So that can help with testing. You can't test with everything. Like WordPress has something like 55,000 plugins in its repository. So obviously, you're not going to test it against every plugin. So you kind of need to be smart about it. So test against the most popular plugins, the most widely used, and also it depends on your target audience. So if you're targeting like kind of DIY audience, they're going to use, let's say, a different form plugin than if you're targeting like a more business or enterprise type of audience. They'll maybe be using something else. So you need to, like, that's also a way to make your testing more efficient. Like think about who your users are. And as you start onboarding users, if your product is like a SaaS, you can start to gather data. What plugins are our users using? Oh, I see that everyone's using this plugin. Okay, so we should always make sure before every release to test against that plugin. But the bottom line is also, if you are testing thoroughly, you probably at some point will miss something anyways, and so you need to have a really good feedback loop with your users, so that if you release a product or an update to a product, they can easily and quickly tell you if something is breaking because of a release, and then you can hopefully work quickly on patching it and release an upgrade that solves that issue. So it's a combination of testing smartly, and having a good feedback loop with your users.
Great. That means testing is the main part.
Yeah.
So, coming up, just trying to conclude our entire session as time is run out. So, can you some like advices or tips and techniques regarding to the evolution of website tools, like which websites just need to use and which tools need to use?
I recently participated on a panel that was organized by the Admin Bar community, by Kyle and the Admin Bar, and we reviewed like he runs a really interesting survey of agencies and professionals and asks them all sorts of questions, and then we talked through it, like we discussed the results. And one thing that came up was that the price that agencies or solopreneurs are charging per website is not very high, but projects can take a lot of time. So you have two options there in order to like become more profitable, like or even break even to some extent. Sometimes one is to charge more, which is hard because sometimes the market has certain price sensitivity, and there's not really much room for that. You can change that by branding yourself as a higher level, more premium agency and things like that. But that's the whole thing. Or you can become more efficient in your web building. Something that I did in our agency was always trying to find ways to become more efficient, whether it's setting up staging sites, pushing staging sites to live, domain management, like having dashboards and things like that. And I highly recommend always looking at what tools are out there that exist or are being developed or being launched that can help you do your job in a more efficient way. And yes, they cost. But if you're paying $30 a month for something and it's saving you even 2 hours a month, like
Mhm.
assuming that your hourly rate is more than $30, which probably is, then you've already like that was already worth it. So I would highly recommend looking for ways to streamline what you're doing and keep an eye on AI, because eventually AI might become like your sidekick, your other team member that helps you like accelerate
Mhm.
your web project so that you can do it much faster, and then potentially do more projects per month.
Great. Thank you for sharing this information. That's quite insightful for the users. And thank you, Miriam Schwab, for sharing this all of this information. And if there are any much more questions, I will just let you know around there. Right? Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. This was
Okay.
interesting. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.